Welcome to the Young Indy Chroniclers, a podcast about the making of the show The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which first aired on ABC in 1992.
Kept thinking about what was Indiana Jones like as a young man. I came up with this idea of him seeing the world through the eyes of a soldier and a secret agent.
Over the course of our podcast, we're going to talk to a whole host of very talented people who either worked on this show or were there from the beginning.
We were able to shoot it on location in the real places where these events took place.
Oh, make it up as you go. Oh boy, that's great advice.
We hired some of the best European directors, a whole host of very, very talented people.
I'm your host, Peter Holmstrom.
And I'm Daniel Noah, and this is the Young Indy Chroniclers.
There's only one rule, Indiana. Stay alive.
Welcome to the Young Indy Chroniclers, the one and only podcast devoted specifically and solely to the Young Indiana Jones television series and franchise. I'm your host, Peter Holmstrom, and joining me on this adventure of a lifetime is Mr. Daniel Noah. Television of the 1990s was more often than not filmed on the same location or nearby to where it was written. The writer's room would be on the Paramount lot, and the writers could walk the 100 or so yards to the soundstage where the episode was being filmed. The Young Indiana Jones television series was unique in that it was written in Marin County, but filmed all over the world, with the main production hub being based out of Prague, which is today in the Czech Republic. This created a rather distinct division between the post-production process, where George Lucas and Lucasfilm's energies would be, and the physical production arm run by Rick McCallum in Europe. In the days before email and Zoom, the physical production could exist with quite a large amount of creative autonomy, allowing for the directors to feel a true sense of ownership over their episodes, far more than most directors for episodic television would in the United States. On today's show, we're thrilled to have as a guest one of these such directors, a French filmmaker known for Dial Code Santa Claus, and directed 2 episodes of Young Indy, Paris 1908, where Young Indy engages with the French Impressionist movement and Pablo Picasso, and possibly one of the most visually stunning episodes of the series, Verdun 1916. René Manzor is our guest today. Thank you very much for being here.
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you. We're so excited to talk to you. You are our first director. The first guest on the podcast, who was a director of the series, so this is a big moment for us.
Okay, so I do the clap then, like that.
Action.
Before we even talk about Young Indy, I'd love just to hear about your own experiences and history and how you first got involved in the film business.
Well, I began my career as a director, writer-director I was 25. Thanks to Alain Delon, who's a big star in France, a living legend. And he gave the first shot to a young director, 25, just because he loved the script. It's called Le Passage, The Passage in English. So he gave me my break, really, and I directed that film. It was supposed to be a film d'auteur, like a small film, and he broke every record. And because of that, I waited 3 years before I could do another movie, because in France, doing commercial movie was bad, in the 80s. So it took me 3 years, and then after those 3 years, I wrote and directed another film called, in the States, Dial Code Santa Claus, aka Deadly Games. And that film basically was ripped off in the States by a very famous writer-producer called John Hughes. And he made out of it what could have been a remake if he had been bought, And the film was Home Alone. So Home Alone then broke every single record around the world. And because of that, my career began in the States because, everybody could see that, the film was done before. And so the studios, they just said, let's hire that guy. He's going to write, high concepts for us. And that's how I began my career in the States. And pretty soon, the film Dial Code Santa Claus, went around town, and Steven Spielberg watched it and loved it. And so because of him, my career took another step, because, when George Lucas was looking for directors, international directors to direct the series, because he wanted, to have like this European feel to the series, because it was happening around the world and not, within the States. Steven Spielberg asked him, "Do you have any French directors?" And they didn't at the time. And so he said, "Well, I have a guy, he's working with us on a." We were working on a project. It was Tintin, actually. The project it was not the one they did afterwards. It was the Autocar Scepter. It was a screenplay wrote by Melissa Mathison, the screenwriter of E.T. A wonderful screenplay, very well written. And then he got stuck in development. They lost the rights, and it took them I don't know 10 years. 20 years to
20,
get
I think. Yeah.
To get the rights back. And so that's to make it short, when Rick McCallum and George Lucas were looking for a French director to direct, because George wanted to have a director per country. I mean, that was his idea, the ideal idea. And to have a French director direct the French episode, have a German director direct the German episode, etc. And so then Steven showed George and Rick my two first features, and they loved them, and that's how I began.
He's 9 years old. His name is Thomas. He's a little genius. He believes in Father Christmas. His two favorite pastimes: computers and superheroes. December 24th, midnight. Hidden under the dining room table, Thomas waits for Father Christmas. But what he does not know is that he is about to experience the most frightening night in his entire life.
T'as tué mon chat, t'as voulu tuer mon grand-père et tu m'as fait mal. Ici, t'es chez moi et tu vas regretter d'être venu.
I have to tell you too, I absolutely love Dial Code Santa Claus. It's a fantastic movie, and I hadn't even put it together that you had been the director of that and also Young Indy until I looked it up. I was like, oh my God, this is I absolutely love that film. I just like to think about George watching that movie and just being like, yeah, it's great. It's wonderful.
I wanted to ask, the French element of the series, like he, at one point he's working for French intelligence. Of course, it's the First World War. So much of the series takes place in France, your episode and many other episodes. What were your thoughts about that when you came onto the project, looking at that time, 80 years, into the past? What were your feelings as a French filmmaker of working in that space?
George's idea was to basically do a series that would be like a historical piece for American youngsters, the kids, basically. George is like a teacher, really. I mean, his background is that. And he said, well, the kids, they need to know about the history of the world. So he used really Indiana Jones as a guide for them, to actually know what was going on outside the U.S. And so in each episode, he would meet a famous character. And so in my episodes, one, he was to meet Picasso, like when he was really young, like 9 years old.
I create a new way of seeing things.
But your pictures don't look like anything.
What do you mean?
Well, the pictures of those ladies in your studio, they don't even look like ladies.
And the other one was taking place between the Battle of Verdun, like the First World War.
Next on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
The fastest of the Belgians. The new one. Him rides like the wind.
I order you to resume the attack.
I won't because I can't.
How many men did he lose? Obviously not enough.
And so the theme of this episode, the specific episode, was really the shock of Indiana Jones as a youngster, like a 22-year-old, understanding what war was and how stupid war was, and the shock of that. And so when I read the screenplay, all the screenplays were already written by George and some screenwriters, very talented screenwriters. And they did that in Skywalker Ranch like 1 year prior to the shoot. So when I read the script on the plane, like going to Prague, because I was living in the States at the time. And when I read the screenplay, there was, something that as a French citizen and knowing history, I couldn't let that go because Old Indy was part of the show before they changed. They re-edit basically the episodes, doing like features after that. But before there was like Old Indy introducing each episode. And there was a bookend at the end where basically he was concluding the episode like a teacher, really. He was playing the role of a teacher.
I buy and sell companies, sir. I'm not running an employment agency. And according to these figures, it's going to take me longer to get my profits out.
Figures? We're talking about people's lives here.
You don't understand. Let me explain.
No, hold on. No. You listen to me, Sonny. You remind me of someone I met in the First World War. I enlisted in the Belgian army under an alias. They made me a courier, and before I knew it, I was with the high command of the French Second Army at Verdun.
And since there was a character in Verdun who was a hero at the time, which was General Pétain.
You can't authorize another attack from this position. I just have. Just like that. An attack of this magnitude must be planned to the last detail. This is not a recommendation. I insist upon it.
You insist.
I expect your support, General.
But General Pétain did some very bad mistakes when he became a politician. And Old Indy needed to know that. Young Indy couldn't. But so for the bookends, I said to George, look, I mean, there is a huge mistake here. And in France, everybody knows. In Europe, everybody knows that Pétain is a very ambiguous character. And so Old Indy, at the end, should say something about it because he knows. And of course, during the First World War, General Pétain was a hero. He was, opposed to those massacres, and it's very clear in the script.
Cancel the attack. I have orders to attack. Nivelle, with those guns there, our men have no chance of success. The casualties will be 90%. If you let this attack go, knowing those guns are there, you are committing murder.
He wants to stop this foolish battle, and he wants to save lives. And so George just redid completely the bookends just because of that. So it's to tell you how precise his work was and how important for him it was that history would be played, fully, really.
Well, the orders never got there. Nobody ever found out what I did. The attack was delayed, and 10,000 men lived a day longer. The French finally retook Fort Douaumont. There were 20,000 casualties. As for old General Pétain, he hated politicians because he thought they had no concern for human life. But after the war, Pétain became a politician himself and had a hard time indeed living up to his own moral code.
Since you mentioned the re-edits, I wanted to ask you, because we actually were able to get our hands on the original version of your Verdun episode, which we had never previously seen. And the bookends have been removed, on the modern version. But they also, there's new footage and there's new sequences that were added to the modern version that were not even there in the broadcast version. I was curious if you were involved in that process at all, or were even aware that these changes had been made to the episode.
Yeah, with the for the audience out there, like the episode as it stands in the original edit, you have the bookend, and then you kind of follow Indy.
I was with the high command of the French Second Army at Verdun, one of the worst battles of the war.
We are going to retake Fort Douaumont. We attack here. The north side.
He's on his motorcycle, and you kind of like lead him into the battle.
How's the fastest of the dungeons?
It's a new one. Him rides like the wind.
And so it's kind of like this specific leading to an expansion of the world. Whereas in the movie-length version that currently exists, you start with much more of a macro level look at the war and the work of these couriers.
To the commander of the Second Army. Your appointment replacing General Pétain is long overdue. Congratulations, General Nivelle.
Discretion, Mangin, discretion. The good general will be joining us.
And then hone in on Indy from there. And so, the scope is much bigger in the movie length version. So a question, for me as well, is just like, was that footage already shot for the original during your original shoot, and then just re-edited into a new thing, or was this new footage shot later on?
First of all, George is the real creator of that series, and he was editing those features. So, for me, there is no better person to actually do whatever he wants with the material than anyone. He's the creator of the show. It's not like a studio took over and, just like change everything. No, the creator took over. And he didn't want old Indy. Maybe he had in mind, that basically there was a better way of actually showing the episodes on the network television, because he had a hard time with the network and with Paramount, because the Paramount was basically expecting they thought they would have like 20 Indiana Jones, per year. They were very clear. I mean, George was very clear that was like it was not like the movies, and with us directors as well during the shoot. I mean, because we had the Spielberg movies in mind, especially us as directors, because we loved the style of Steven, and they warned us very, very early in the game. Look, I mean, this has not to do with. I mean, we were all doing the same mistakes. We had the films in mind, and we thought we would serve basically George by trying to complete the mythology, understanding the DNA of the mythology, and serve the mythology. But it was clear, very clear, that was not the case. And so the bookends were not shot by myself. The bookends were shot later. So, if they remove that or if they put it back, I don't really care. I mean, what's important for me, it's more important to know that George is behind it. It's exactly the same thing as, for me, the change is less of a problem than removing George from the Star Wars films.
They fly now! They fly now! They fly now!
Because then we really reach, we really have a problem there.
Balance. Powerful light, powerful darkness.
Where'd you get that?
A good question for another time.
As opposed to if he changes, he makes 2 episodes. I think that mine is with another one.
Matahari.
Yeah, together, and also the one with Picasso is with another one. I don't care. I mean, George is the all power, artistic power. I'm not talking about political power, and just an anecdote that shows you how decent he is and how respectful he is of the artists that work with him. When I finished my director's cut of Verdun, I sent the cut to Skywalker Ranch, and George then changed. He did his cut. I did my director's cut, but I didn't have the final cut. He had the final cut, and thank God he had the final cut, because he had the overview of everything. I was just like putting my stone on the wall. I was not creating the wall. So once I sent my cut, Rick told me, René, George would like to send you, the cuts, the final cuts, so you can comment. So I said to him, are you sure? Because I don't want to offend him, but I could have a lot of comments, on the cut. Yeah. Go ahead, just do it. So I sent like 10 pages of notes, on the show, because of the intention I had when I shot, the episode, and I was explaining why this, why that, like verbalizing it, not saying I prefer that shot. No, telling why. And at the end, Rick called me and he said, René, you know what? We used 90% of your comments. So he was basically involving the people working with him. He was, adding talents so that the show would be better. For him, the good idea was the best idea. Not his or mine or the other directors. It was like a group of people working together, and he had final say because it was his creation, which is kind of normal. I mean, for me, it's so I have no problem with the change of editing and everything he can do. The only problem I have is that he was removed from Star Wars. That's really that didn't go well,
Luke is gone. I felt it. But it wasn't sadness or pain. It was peace and purpose.
I am all the Sith.
And I. I'm all the Jedi.
I did want to ask, though, if we could back up a little bit. You mentioned how you had read the script for Verdun on the plane over to Europe. What were those early steps you would take as a director to prepare for the episode? Because I think the shooting of Young Indy is very distinct from shooting of a lot of television shows in the States. You had 3 weeks, I think, to shoot your episode. It's much more of a movie. You have a lot of moving parts. What were some of those early steps for you as a director?
The anecdote I have, it's my first meeting. Let's say I met George and Rick in Barcelona when they were shooting Terry Jones's movie over there.
Yeah.
So I met with them over there, and then we never mentioned the episode. We talked about the painting, the cubism. We talked about the war, the First World War. It was like an exam, It was so funny because it was I couldn't understand what was going on, and so when I took the plane back to Los Angeles, I had met George Lucas, so I was kind of happy. And Rick was a really nice man, very sympathetic, and so I was going home, wondering what did they want me? Advice on painting or of the war? I couldn't understand. But we never mentioned the scripts or the episodes. And when I got home, I had a message from my agent saying, look, they love you. They want you to do 2 episodes. One is Indy meets Picasso, and the other one is the First World War. So I understood, and I had gone through an exam, something like that. But the second time I met with Rick, it was in Barrandov studio in Prague. And the first thing he said to me, because I had read the script, of course, and on the plane, he said, look, René, I know you directors, I understand, you've read the script, and you're already dreaming of the battle scenes, but we're going to use stock shots for those battle scenes. I say, what? We're going to use stock shots for the battle scenes. It's a very tight budget, It's not because we have Paramount or Spielberg and George Lucas. George is producing the show with his own money, really. So, and he wants freedom. He hates to have the studio on his back. And so freedom has a price. And so the battle scenes, we're going to use stock shots. But don't overreact. Just look at the tape. I have the tape. You look at the hotel. We'll talk about it later. So I go to the hotel and I screen it immediately. It was like VHS at the time. I put the VHS on the recorder and I just look at, and it was beautiful, but everything was high angle shots. There were plenty of extras, more than I will ever have. But it was not Verdun. For me, Verdun was at the level of the deads. I wanted the camera to be, on the ground with the soldiers, moving at the level where they would be at the end, because they would die on this battlefield. And that was basically my vision as a director. So I was mad as hell, because and at the same time, I said, you have to find a way to go back and see Rick. He's the producer of the show. You're just a for-hire director, You're not the creator. It's not your film, but you have a vision, and you're paid for that vision. So go and see him and try to explain what you have in mind. But first of all, I went to see the first AD, and I said to him, give me the schedule. I just look at the schedule, and on the schedule, I see a travel day. And I said to him, hey, why there is this travel day here? He said, well, because, we are in Prague, René. We have to go to a field to actually, be, to be in the trenches, because we have scenes in the trenches. And so I pull out a compass. I always have a compass with me on the set. And I go around the Barrandov studio with the compass, and I see that the huge building of Barrandov is north. And then I see Prague in front of me. On the left side, there is an electric pillar. On the right side, there is the freeway. And then, okay, I go inside where Rick was having lunch. And I said to Rick, look, Rick, I need to see you. Can you come with me outside? And said, well, I'm having lunch, René. Yeah, I know you're having lunch. You can have lunch later. I haven't had lunch, so you're my producer. I need you. And so, please. And so, we had met 2 days prior to that. So you have to keep that in mind, And so Rick comes out, and we're on the lot of the Barrandov studio, and I said to him, this is Verdun. We're going to shoot here. And he said to me, are you kidding, René? There is Prague in front of us. Here is pillar, electric pillar. And on the right side, there is a highway. Not to mention the studio, behind us. And I said to him, look, the studio is north, Rick. I never shoot north. It's front light. It's ugly. I'm never going to shoot this way. Yeah, well, but about, the pillar, Prague, the highway. And I said to him, put your eye at the level of the dead, where the camera should be. This is Earth here. You know, it's not concrete. We're going to turn that upside down. And with the ups and downs, you will never see Prague. You will never see the highway. You will never see the electric pillar. And I will never shoot north. And he said, well, what about extras, René? You know? Well, we'll talk about that later. I said, no. We have to talk. No. On the schedule, we have a travel day. And the crew is paid, even if it's half, they're paid during this travel day. If we stay here in Barndorf, we're going to save money because the crew will have lunch here where you were supposed to have lunch. We will not rent trucks. We will save gas. We will not move the crew. We will save time. And he said to me, what about extras? Well, extras, I need 100 extras. Yeah, 100 French. No. 100 extras, 200 costumes. I'm going to switch costumes. I'm going to shoot the French side, then I'm going to shoot the German side. And he said to me, 200 costumes. Yeah, 200. 100 extras. 100. We shoot on the travel day. Here. He shakes hand. Deal. That's Rick. So you imagine a for-hire director, the youngest of all, because when I saw the list of directors, I knew every one of them. The only one I didn't know was myself. I was René. Who's that guy? René. All the rest of the directors were famous directors: Terry Jones, Billy August, Simon Windsor, Nicholas Roeg. People I've seen their movies. But I suddenly had just the vision of the director. That's my job, and I could convey that to Rick. And so then I said, you're going to use my footage as stock shots for the rest of the episodes. So some of what you said are, my stock shots, because we use some for the show and others for the rest of the episodes. And when George saw the dailies, he just he couldn't believe, because George knew he was paying, so he knew that we were going to use stock shots, But Rick decided without calling George. He was a real producer. He was not just there to see, how much it was. It was a real producer. He could see the end, not just, the day by day. So the real talent on this show, it's Rick, really.
It's a beautiful episode. I came to the show on VHS, and your episode wasn't on the VHS. When they did the VHS, they didn't release them all. So I didn't see it till it came DVD, which is 10 years later. And I was so struck by the photography. And actually, the first thing you're struck by is this footage that's been put at the beginning, which I think is yours, because it looks like the rest of the footage, and it's beautiful and it's moody, and it's, you get the suffering and the craziness and the explosions, and it really sinks you into it. And then you get into that room with the old man, and they're living high, and they're drinking wine, and they're, it's like any corporate boardroom, you've ever could imagine.
But you've done me a power of good.
Very good, sir.
Yes, indeed, General.
The report from the Sector 4, sir.
How much ground was gained?
None, sir.
What's that, Major? I thought you said none.
I did, sir.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful episode. And how old were you when you directed the episode?
I was 32, I guess. 30, yeah.
Younger than us, that's all we'll say. He's younger than us.
That's right.
Second Army Command, sir.
Oh, no.
Come on. Damn it. Answer. The telephone line to the trenches is down. Are you a fast runner, Corporal? Yes, sir. What's happening, sir? The guns you hear are ours. The attack must begin when those guns stop firing. The enemy will have time to recover. If the enemy has time to recover, they will slaughter my men. Do you understand me?
14 days we had, 14 days for 1 hour show, and it's like $500,000, which is crazy. And so Rick told me at the end of the shooting, he said, René, when they will ask you how much cost the episode, I'm telling you, it's 500,000. And so if they don't believe them, the producer that you will meet then, ask them to call me, So he was proud of, what we had accomplished at production value, for that money, really,
What was the interaction like with the cast? I mean, you mentioned how many extras you had. You had a lot of people to wrangle, a lot of actors to service. What's that process like, especially for such a war-heavy episode?
Well, the number of extras was 1 day. We had them for that 1 day. We went into night because we did the same day the scene where Indy's going through the corpses, and so I really overused those extras, in order to have them on screen. But the scene where Indy is crawling also for me was very important because I wanted to follow him to actually see that the battlefield was like full of corpses, So because the idea was really to convey to the audience and to the youngsters, that they will see that what war is. If we could accomplish something like that with a film, maybe we can save lives later. If people realize how stupid it is, so suddenly a film can have a power, And also there is a theme in that episode. And the first time I met with Gavin Bouquet, the production designer, who's very talented and did the 3 Star Wars, 1, 2, and 3 after that. He showed me like illustrations and stuff, during the prep and all that. And I said, yeah, that's nice, Gavin, that's nice. But you have to understand the story that we're going to tell here. He said, well, it's the story of the Battle of Verdun. No. I'm talking about the theme beneath the story. The theme is the power of one. That's the theme. Because at the end, basically, after having realized what war is, Indy is gonna save lives by destroying the order. He's gonna say, I'm not the gun. They want me to be the trigger of the gun. Fuck the gun.
They've ordered the attack to continue.
With the big guns. They can't.
Unfortunately, Corporal, they damn well can.
I'm not going to deliver that order. And by doing that, one person can save 10,000 because there was like 10,000 people dying every single day. So that's the theme, the power of one. It's important when you do actually a film or a novel to understand what the theme is, behind, underneath the plot. What is the theme? What actually you are conveying? What's the idea? Because it perspires into everything. Even when you're directing the actors, you have one goal really, and that was the theme of Verdun.
Colonel Bark.
This is General Joffre. I order you to resume the attack.
I won't, sir.
What?
I won't because I can't.
I'm the commander-in-chief of the army. I'm giving you a direct order.
And I am staring at an order canceling the attack. A written order, signed by General Pétain. A written order can be changed only by another written order. If you really are Commander-in-Chief Joffre, you'll understand how you wrote that regulation.
I want you to prepare for an attack. A written countermand, signed by me, will be arriving immediately.
And then looking at your other episode, which Paris 1908, very different tonally than the Verdun episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you approach that one? What was that process like for you?
Well, for me, it was like a screwball comedy in terms of, one is a drama, really like an epic drama. The other one is a screwball comedy because the idea is to follow young Indy and the mischievous aspects of young Indy, because it is written like that.
Introduce yourself properly. This is Henry Jones Jr. I'm Miss Seymour, and you are Norman
Rockwell.
The real creators of the show are the writers and the creator, the showrunner. I mean, George. When you read the script, you have a feeling, and so that feeling, what you do as a director, you emphasize that feeling. You don't invent a story. You just but you don't just illustrate the story. You emphasize everything. And so, for example, when he gets out of the room, on the rooftops and stuff, that's something that came up, during the prep, really.
The world's gone crazy, woman. First, Miss Seymour locked me in my room, but then I escaped and nearly fell from the rooftops.
It was written that he was getting out of his room to go and meet Picasso and all those crazy painter stuff, but not maybe through that way, So we had to basically, and I have a good story also, an anecdote for your listeners with Rick, because I was challenging him all the time. And we were so great partners. And so one day, during the prep of the Paris episode, I had just looked at illustrations book that we have in France, which is, at the time photos didn't exist, and so you had like artists that were drawing what they would see, like a little like in the when you have a case, you like
police sketch artist who draws the suspect.
Yeah, exactly. And so I saw illustrations of the cabaret in we call in France les années folles. It's the crazy years, all those crazy years. And I saw that there were like chimpanzees in tuxedos serving champagne to the ladies. So I said to Rick, look at that. This is incredible. Why don't we do that, on this scene where, they are in the little opera there with the French cancan and all that stuff. So why don't we have chimps serving? René, you're not telling me that you want to have chimps on the set, Yes, exactly. That's what I'm telling you. So why don't we try? At least we try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And he said, okay, let me think about it. So when you say that, usually it's a no, like a disguised no. But so I thought it was a no. And the next day, Rick shows up on the set and said, René, I have the trainer. We can have two chimps, and we're actually have somebody designing the tuxedos, so they can fit. And
wow!
So we're gonna try. Since we have 15 days, during the prep to actually train those chimps. But the trainer is very confident, and so come the day where we actually do that. So we have all the ladies. It's extras also. It's like one day with the extras, the dancers, the French cancan, and the little opera stuff. And the day before, I asked Rick for 2 other cameras because I was afraid that I would have one take with those chimps, and so I wanted to be sure that I had several shots, angle and stuff. And so the day comes, and so basically the trainer is here with the chimps, and he put the chimps on with the tuxedos on already. And they put them on the table, and before I can say roll camera, the chimps, they tear their tuxedos and they pull the tablecloth off like that. Everything goes to the roof, and they poop on the table. I mean, it was, everybody was frozen because the chimps they're so strong, and it's like Hulk, suddenly Hulk. And it's like 2 Hulks on the table. And so I turned to my camera, the operator, and said, "You actually shot that, right?" Everybody was frozen. Nobody, and nobody could, everybody was frozen, like an accident. Something happens. It's like very brief. I'm describing it now. It's like slow motion, but it's like instantly. And so the trainer caught his chimps and stuff, okay? And then Rick came to me and said, "René, I did my job. I brought the chimps, I brought the trainer, the tuxedos, and so now we got to clean up that." And it was such a mess, so it took us 2 hours to actually clean everything. And he said to me, "René, now it's your turn to do your job. I'm not going to go we're not going to go 2 hours extra because of that. So what do you propose?" And I said, I thought, a brothel, like a Western brothel, so we're going to use everything that, and so the scene that you actually saw was not scripted, it's a scene that came out of the disaster that was provoked by the chimps, going crazy on the tables.
Well, I always thought that episode was funny because nobody questions the little 8-year-old Indiana Jones going through Paris with prostitutes and singers, and it's just like nobody mentions it. It's like, what?
Want to spend some time with me, boys?
No.
Come with
me. Indy. Go, have some fun. Where are the other girls?
Picasso.
Again.
That actually spurs on a question, though, for me is, Corey Carrier has since left the industry and doesn't really do interviews very often. I wonder if you have any comment about him as a young performer, working with him as, I think he was 12 or something at the time, but he's still a very young performer. I wonder if you have any recollection of him.
It was really, really enjoyable to work with. It was fantastic. He was very mischievous, like the character, you had that. It was extremely professional. He knew his lines on, he was very inventive. I remember I did a scene with him that was like a scene sequence where Miss Seymour is sleeping and he's like trying to escape, and then coming back. And so all that was done in one shot, which is something difficult for a kid, to actually do that. He was really good on his marks too, because there was a dolly movement that was very precise, even for the focus puller and stuff. And he had a way around the 2 rooms and stuff. He was excellent. It's too bad he didn't continue because he was very gifted. Very gifted.
Henry, you were not in your room last night.
I was working here, where it's quiet. Sam must have fallen asleep. Are you going to punish me?
No.
That's fantastic. And then, also just like a similar question, but related to working with Sean Patrick Flanery for the Verdun episode. Playing an Indy who's, a teenager, he's dealing with a lot of stuff. I mean, I imagine it was a tough episode to shoot just because of the physicality of it all. But what was it like working with him?
With Sean, I he had a problem working with me on the set. Maybe my English was not as good as it is supposed to be today. He couldn't understand at the time what I was after. And he never complained about anything. I could feel that it was like lukewarm between us, because of the fact that he was kind of doubting maybe what I was doing. And a few months ago, he did an article in a newspaper, and he said that the best episode for him is Verdun. And he said in this article that he had doubted me on the set. I discovered everything because Rick sent it to me. He said, René, just look at what Sean Patrick is saying. And he says that everything I told him was making sense when he actually saw the movie. And he was basically not sad, but he looking back, he could regret in a way the fact that we didn't share more. But he was a professional on the set. He never complained about anything. He didn't do any whimsical stuff, or he was dead on, The only thing I could see in his eyes when I was asking him to do something, that he was going to do it, but he didn't get it, But actually, it is his favorite episode today. So that was a good gift for me. I thank Rick to send me that, because I did my job, and at the end George was happy with the cut. My producer Rick was happy on the set, but I don't work the same way. Every single director has his own style. And he had done several episodes with other directors, English-speaking directors as well. And so I think it's maybe problem of language barrier. It didn't stop me from communicating with Rick at the same time, even asking stuff. But maybe with Sean Patrick, there was something. But everything I asked him to do, and also I'm very precise on camera moves, and I love to combine the blocking of the actors and the camera move. So for certain actors, this could be something that takes freedom out of them a little bit, because suddenly they are in a choreography. And maybe that also is part of the problem, but at the end it's beautiful, and it tells the story even more. It's not just aesthetic shots. It's suddenly, if you are on the actor when he say a specific line, and the camera help, because it shows the emotion of the actor at that moment, as opposed to be away from him or in large shots or something. I think I'm helping the actor by doing that, exactly as the actor is helping me by performing. It's a combination, and I think that we have this power, movie makers, to actually change the position of the limelight. When you're in the theater, the limelight is there, the audience is there, and the actors perform for the audience. We, director, can move the limelight during a shot, as opposed to say, the limelight is here, the limelight is here. We have this power of changing, it's like moving the viewer at the same time that the actor moves, and the combination of both. I mean, this is what George loved most about my work. He said to me, he did a compliment. He said, the only time I saw that kind of choreography thing is on Kubrick. I say, okay, I take that as a compliment. Thank you. Thanks.
I have to tell you, like, my favorite introductory shot for Indy is from your episode of Verdun, where you kind of like hone in on him. He's like bouncing the ball against the wall, and then he just turns around. He looks great, in that leather outfit and by his motorcycle. And I love that shot so much. I think it's fantastic.
Well, it's an homage. It's an homage to Steven, because
sure.
That's a signature of him, and I realized that in the script, he wasn't named. And I realized that if the audience was going to see the first episode, the camera would present the hero without anyone having to say his name, just because they would remind the style, the Spielberg style, the actor that turns and the camera tracks in. It's a difficult shot for the focus puller at the same time, but when it's done well and played well by the actor, but one of these shots is saying. Sean Patrick told me, says, "Why am I on my back?" I said, "Well, you're going to turn, and the camera's going to move."
That's funny. As we were talking about actors, he's a smaller role in your episode, but the actor Ronnie Couture, who plays Remy, the Belgian, you have a great scene with him in the hospital, and he's had the surgery. Do you have any memories of working with him? He's certainly one of our favorite characters on the show.
Yeah, he was a fantastic actor. He had a very wide range. He could go from comedy, like, screwball comedy, like.
Life is passing you by.
Looks like it hit you in the face.
I was dancing on the piano.
On top of the piano.
Yes, but it didn't last.
You took away our beautiful music.
You got mad.
Sounds like the hallmark of a pretty grand party.
To drama. He was very gifted, and he could do, a lot of emotion as well. He was very emotional.
Stop it!
They didn't get it out. It's still in there.
It is not still in there.
I can feel it. You have to operate again.
Private, control yourself. Restrain him.
No!
Stop!
He's a danger to himself and others.
No, he's not. Let me talk to him.
I like that scene, his scene when he's like, he doesn't want to return to war. And
how are you, Remy?
Could be better, my friend.
Did the surgeon really leave it in?
No. They got it out. I don't want to go back to the trenches. They'll send me back if I feel well. So I'm not going to feel well.
But you have to keep in mind that those scenes were written, We are just the last one who signs the film, the director.
Right.
Beforehand, there are people that actually write, those are the real creators. We write with the camera, but they worked, 1 year prior to the shoot, as I was saying, with George. And that scene, the dialogue of that scene is very, very profound, very profound.
I'm not going.
Really listen to me. You have to let it heal. If you make it worse, they'll find out, and you'll end up in front of a firing squad.
I thought this in charge, and in charge!
Remy, you have to pull yourself together, okay?
Okay. I'm all right.
There is another scene which is very interesting, and it was actually written that way. It wasn't. I very rarely change, dialogue on the set. I do it when there is a real problem with the actor that cannot do it, that cannot perform it. But then we find a way of saying the same thing differently, but the same thing, not something else. And the scene is when they actually explain war. with a potato, a sausage, This was very good.
France is on the left. Russia is on the right. The sausage is Germany, okay? Now, this is Austria. The potato is Belgium, and the beer is Britain. And here, we have Serbia. Now, when the Archduke of Austria is assassinated in Serbia, Austria threatens to invade Serbia.
What about Germany?
Germany, as an ally of Austria, declares war on Russia and of Serbia.
But we're fighting in France.
The only thing I did at the time is that I said to the operator to go closer, because we were on a small screen, we were not on the big screen. So I said, this need to be understood. I mean, it is very clear on the script. So let's not be, let's try to just be very efficient here. When you see the potato, we really have to understand that it is a potato, a sausage. And so we have to think that the big screen and the small screen, we don't use the same, shots.
That's just an interesting comment to sort of come at. You're directing this, both of these episodes are very cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you feel like, I guess maybe the way to ask this question would be like, how would you have shot it differently for the big screen? What are those differences for you?
Well, first of all, George wanted to, he hired movie directors. So he wanted to have the scope, even though the frame was not, is not CinemaScope, it was really for the TV. He wanted to have the epic blow, so basically when we shot, we knew that for him it was not TV. It was like movies, little movies. But at the end, it would be screened on a TV set. And at the time, people didn't have those big screens we're having now, like home theater stuff. They had little TV. So it was our job to actually continue to have the epic blow, but to be sure that some of the details would actually be seen. But I don't know if on Lawrence of Arabia, when he's actually blowing the match, it's an extreme close-up too, so close-ups are not for TV, and I'm not saying that, but certain things can be missed, really, and they don't have to.
I have to tell you too, that scene in the church with the hospital, everything like that, it's so haunting. I appreciate you giving credit to the writers, but I feel like your shooting in that scene creates the language. It is just such a haunting scene, and Remy's performance there. It sticks with you. It's one of the best scenes I think in the whole series. I mean, it gets to you on a deep level.
What I was intending when I said, and sorry if my English is not that, but it's better than it was when I shot the episodes. The scene was written in a hospital. So when what we can do to emphasize what's written, the scene was written the way it is, but it was happening in a hospital. And when I went to see Rick and I said, look, at the time, the hospitals were full of people. There was no place. So the churches, they were transformed into hospitals. And to convey that, I would like to shoot that in a church. So during the prep, we looked for a church to actually shoot that scene. The scene would not feel the same in a hospital, with the same lines. So the job of the director, he has a job to do, he's not just directing shots. He just have to put his mind, but his inspiration comes from the script. Exactly like the actors are inspired by the script, but they are not just saying the lines. They bring something to the table. They bring the art to the table. the director has to do the same. He has to, you know, question everything and see if there is not a better way to actually emphasize, with the same money, to emphasize the you know, the story. Actually, that's basically our job.
Yeah, I love that because thematically it hits on such a profound level. It being said in a church, you know, these people are very close to death. Many of them are going to die. And there's Indy walking through this and seeing just what war is leading to. And it's just absolutely haunting. I love it so much.
And the church is in disrepair. There's holes, you know, the desperation of the situation is just immediately present. And it makes that desperation beautiful.
Thank you.
I have to go now. Come back as soon as I get a chance.
Looking at your episodes, it seems like you directed one episode for what would have been considered season 1 in the States, and then you do another one for season 2. Was there ever talk, like, because I know George and Lucasfilm like to really plan ahead with this show, was there ever talk about you coming back for another episode?
I was actually I directed the episodes like back to back, like, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yes, it was the way it was planned. It was not. I couldn't direct them really back to back because actually, while I was prepping, another director was shooting, and after the end of his shot, I would just shoot my shooting. So basically, it was like 15 days, 14 days of shooting, 15 days of prep, and we were just like. There were two first ADs, so one working with me when I was prepping, another was actually working with the director that was shooting. And so my wife was about to deliver at the time, and I just, she had the contractions, you know, and I was like 2-3 days before my shoot. And so Rick, he saw me, you know, after the call, and I could just say, fuck, I have to go, you know, I have to go. I have to be, and then I have to come back. And so he said, René, you're going to take the plane, the first plane to Paris. I have just looked at, you know, everything. We're going to rent a car. You're going to go to Munich. And from Munich, you have the first plane that goes to Paris. So you can be there. The fastest you can be is that way. So we did exactly that. And when I arrived there, she said, oh, it's a false alarm. Right?
Oh, no.
It was a false alarm. You know, okay, she had the contractions. She went to the hospital. And so while I was just like, doing an indie stuff, you know, I was during the night crossing the Alps. You know, it was snowing, and I thought I would die there. You know, so I was trying to see my baby. And when I arrived, completely like in a Tex Avery, you know, my tongue like that. It's honey, it was a false alarm. Okay. Okay. So then I went back, and actually I didn't have, you know, cash because it was like, it was happening at the same time. And Simon Windsor was, you know, prepping. And so he said, René, how much do you need? And so he gave me money. You know, it was so funny. But, you know, he had also the spirit of you know, we always say, you know, it's a big family, you know, the movie business, a big family. Yeah. Movie in families, it's the Borgias, you know, it's this kind of family, the movie business.
The Borgias were there in medieval Italy, a very large and powerful family, behaving in a way which we today would be appalled by.
But, you know, there was a spirit, a very special spirit, you know, over there. The crew was like doing like 4 years of shooting, you know, all those were youngsters coming out of school, really. And and they ended up having incredible careers. Like the David Tattersall, the DP, the director of photography, and fantastic, extremely talented people. Gavin Bouquet, who's doing like. You look at those the resumes of those guys, they're incredible people. But there was a spirit of family and a real family. And it was also because of Rick. He was like bringing that spirit. He was living with us. He was the first person on the set with a big smile. The last person on the set was a big smile because of him, And, a fantastic producer. Fantastic. And always basically giving you the choice, It sounds logical to give the choice to the director, but, some people don't see logic the same way, And he had like, for the bike scene, with the Fokker plane action scene, he said to me, René, what do you prefer? That we build the bike exactly the way it was, at that time, and we hire a local stunt man, or we use a motorbike, which is of the period, but it's going to fall out of order like 9 times out of 10, with Eddie Kidd, the scrambling champion, riding it. Well, I said, Eddie Kidd. I said, René, the bike is going to fall out of order 9 out of 10. Yes, but if I get one shot with Eddie Kidd, I was like, suddenly I could see the guy, and so we did that. So he gave me the choice because he knew that I would be the one shooting. I would be, designing the scene. So it would look fantastic because at the same time, you had like small action scenes sometimes in the episode. And it was kind of a carrot to Paramount, because they wanted to have like the films. We couldn't do the films. And basically, George didn't want to do the films. But if suddenly there is a Fokker plane that tries to kill the courier, because if he kills the courier, then the order doesn't go and the battle is won. It's part of the episode, and so we did that. And of course, the motorbike didn't work, but we shot other stuff. While they were repairing the bike, we shot other stuff, and. We couldn't have also we had a plane that the Fokker plane, we had the Fokker plane, but we never could have at the same time the combination of the Fokker plane and the bike, because we were with a walkie-talkie and the Fokker plane, and the shot that we needed to have the plane shoot at the bike, and I did 1 pass, 2 pass like that, and so I said stop. We're going to do like a George Méliès shot, I'm going to lock the camera, we're going to rig the explosives. The motorbike is going to come, and then we're going to have the Fokker plane comes in the same shot. And then, guess what? We are at ILM, no? They can put together 2 shots, they can't. And so we did that. And so it works perfectly. But then the Fokker plane fell out of order. And so some of the shots in the sky, we actually shoot with a model. So it's not a real plane, it's like a model.
Like a remote control, like a plane, a little model in the air. That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a beautiful episode, and just the everything is set up so well. You have the action scene with the plane, and then of course, he comes up with the idea of sort of faking the bike explosion from that later.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
The couriers, you really, it feels so lived in, and you're in that moment. I can see why it's Sean's favorite episode that he did, and it just stands out when you look back at the series. It stands out in your mind. It's a tremendous accomplishment.
And when I gave the cut to George at Skywalker Ranch, it said, "Thank you for 50% of the show." I said, "What?" thank you for those 50% of the show, because now we're going to do the sound. And I realized that the sound, would be very important. And in the 90s in France, in Europe, sound was just an illustration of the picture, nothing more. So right away, I went to see George and say, George, would you mind if I was to stay during the sound, while you work the sound? I'm not going to do my directing thing, I'm going to bring the coffee, I will be the runner, but I want to see that because, in Europe, we don't work that way. And my editor, the editor of the picture, was Ben Burt. And Ben Burt is the sound designer, the guy who did the laser, the Saber laser. I mean, he had like many, did Wall-E, all those big films design, sound design. So I said to Ben, would you mind if I was to stay while you actually do the sound design on this episode? Because for me, it's going to be a huge lesson, and he said, well, have you asked George? Yeah, George, he's okay with that. He said, you can stay whenever, I'll as long as you want. So I stayed with them. And so, of course, I couldn't help during the process. Well, what about this? And what about this? I got excited about the process, and they did a lot of stuff to please me at the same time because we were having fun. And they got an Emmy for the sound on this episode. And so I was away, doing other stuff. And I got a call from Ben. And Ben Burt called me and said, René, it's because of you that we had the Emmy. I said, no, guys, it's because of you. Because you might have an Emmy, but I got a lesson because, from now on, the sound is going to be so important in my films to come, because of you guys.
How long how long did the sound take? Like, how long were you at Skywalker Ranch?
I stayed 2 weeks, 2 more weeks. No, they did an incredible job, incredible. And there was also the score of Joel McNally, fantastic score. And since I was there, for the last scene, there is a montage where basically we see that Indy has to give the order to attack again. And I wanted to have like a requiem. I shot as a requiem with these soldiers like playing chess, under the rain and stuff. They're like the priest is coming and blessing the soldiers. All of that was not written. This is a mute sequence, so it's basically the director has to just like do his job, And at the same time, I said I showed that to Joel and said, look, it's a requiem. So can you just a requiem? And he did this beautiful requiem, that adds so much to the scene. He adds so much to the scene. It's like when you see some scenes of Jaws without the music of John Williams, and when you put the music on, it's like Steven is a fantastic director, he's a genius, but the other guy, and so the combination of both, for the audience is incredible. So suddenly, I had done my job, with the shots and stuff, and Colonel Bark waiting, and you could see the rain pouring into the office, so you see those guys are in the mud, waiting to go waiting to die, really. And suddenly, this is the theme, the power of one. The guy is not going to be the trigger of the gun. Fuck the gun. I'm not going to give the order. And this is the end of the show, really. And maybe this is the end of the podcast.
You may be correct there. You've been very, very generous with your time here, and just thank you so much for hopping on the show. We'd love to know though, like what you've been up to recently. What are you working on right now? If there's anything you want to talk about.
Since now 12 years ago, I started writing novels because when I came back to France, I had spent like 10 years in the States, writing, directing, all of that in English. And, I had like a call, something, the French side that, I needed to go back to my mother tongue. And basically the only way for me to do it plainly was to cut the pictures. So I said, I'm going to continue to tell stories, but with only words as luggage. I'm not gonna put pictures, So the only thing I do now is that each time. So I've written like now my 7th novel is published now, and it's a huge hit. It works very well, and the only thing I do is that I do a book trailer. I direct a book trailer. So I call, actors and technicians I usually work with and say, guys, let's go. We're going to shoot one day. It's going to be one day and nothing more. And during that day, we're going to do a book trailer. So I write a script for the book trailer. And then we actually shoot together that. And then it's online. And you can see them. They can they're online, and so basically it helps me tremendously being a director, because actually I direct inside the novel. It's not just description and lines, dialogue. There is a kind of scenography inside, you cannot help, because basically you actually see it. And each time people read my novels, they say, fuck, I watched a movie. It's not a movie, it's a novel. But, it's very visual, of course, because, it's just kind of my history, really.
That's fantastic. And if fans want to learn more about what you're up to, or links to your books or anything, do you want to promote your website, or if you have any social media?
Website is very easy. It's like www.renemanzor.com. So simpler than that, it's impossible.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much again for being on here. It's been wonderful to speak with you, and hope we could have you back on at some point. So fans out there, if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Instagram at Young Indy Pod. And I hope you like the show. If you like the show, please rate us 5 stars. It helps to let other people know about our podcast and get our name out there. So for Daniel and myself, thank you very much for being here.
Clap.
Absolutely. Leave it there. All right.
Bye-bye, guys. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Next time on the Young Indy Chroniclers.
We're thrilled to have Jonathan Bresman, a post-production intern for Lucasfilm during the days of Young Indiana Jones.
I had applied to be a research intern because that's what I had been at Letterman. And then it's just like, oh, and here's George. If George decides he wants Indy getting off of an ocean liner, we need you to sort of find movies that have like the type of ocean liner George has in mind. And they'll use the ocean liner you find. We had done this little shoot with this rifle. And I pointed at him and say, listen, there's going to be some changes in like the salary structure around here.
No.